just need your compliance. You will feel no pain anymore. No more defiance. Just give us your compliance.
Welcome to the Sharpe Show. I'm so happy that you are joining me this evening. It is 7 p.m. on the East Coast, which means you've got to look at my mug. I don't make the rules. Actually, I do make them. I make the rules and I enforce the rules because I'm clearly a tyrant. You must look at my mug at 7 p.m. And I appreciate you showing up today. And if you care about this show, and I know you do, or you wouldn't be watching, then help me out and like, comment, and share. Let people know that you're doing it so they can see what's going on. It is important. It's the only way I get around the algorithms that are trying to get me to shut me down. So I need your help, guys. Please do that if you would. It's really important. Today, I am doing something I haven't done in a while. I'm actually bringing a guest aboard. I know it's crazy. Usually I'm such a narcissist that it's all about me. But this case, I'm actually bringing a guest aboard. I am bringing somebody aboard who I met actually at Freedom Fest. Someone who has written a book, which when I first heard it seemed to be an odd title. But I think there's a lot of cool stuff on it. He is the author of the Voluntaryist Handbook. I hope I said it right. He is also an activist and an editor at the Libertarian Institute, the man, the myth, the legend, Keith Knight. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, Larry. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Happy to have you here. And if you want to kind of check out what Keith's doing, you can head over to the website. The link I actually put in the show description, or you can follow him on Twitter at Libertarian Inst, which I think stands for Institute. Inst on Twitter. Both of those would work. So, Keith, let me ask you. You had to put together this book. And basically, if I get it right, this is a bunch of essays. Is that right?
37 essays
37
and
of them.
13 collections of quotes from books or just miscellaneous topics.
So this has got to be difficult because when you do this, everyone thinks their stuff is good, right? So everybody wants their stuff in your book. So you don't put them in. Now they're mad at you, or why didn't mine go first, or why did mine go sixth, or whatever the case may be. I'm sure you had some of that to worry about also. But seriously though, what was the center that made you pick the ones that you picked? What made you think this is the common thread that will bring these things to bear?
The common thread was making sure that this was a timeless message, that it could be read in 1 month, 6 months, and years down the road. Not just in English, but in Korean. We're working on a German translation at the time, as well as a French one. And if it's just about Barack Obama versus Mitt Romney's arguments with regard to the ACA, well, then we've not only passed that time, only a microscopic audience is really going to care.
Right.
So it had to be timeless for me.
Right.
And then second, it would have to advocate something on principle as opposed to necessarily talking about costs and benefits, which could change because it seems to me that gives a lot of leeway. It's saying, all right, so some people called government have the right to violently control strangers.
Right.
But if I'm able to really come
also
up
people
with,
they know, not just strangers.
Also people they know too. You'd think that they would give them a pass. Unfortunately, not in this religion.
Right.
So it's not just things that that are temporary. I'd want it to be long term, and it's not just utilitarian. It would be principled arguments. So instead of the assumption being people have to follow the law, but maybe you could break it. The assumption I want to change is human beings own themselves. Therefore, they have the right to make any economic exchange they have that they would like to, unless they're initiating fraud or aggression against an innocent party. So
you were
timeless
trying to make it timeless. Oh, you read?
Yes.
You took my word. Yes, timeless.
Timeless principles. So from there, I said, okay, I used to be a progressive, then I was a Romney supporter, and then a Ron Paul supporter, and then I became a voluntarist. I go, so who was it? If I just had to get a book and tell people, look, there's a million things I would love for you to watch, but if I could just ask you to read one thing, what would it be? And I liked Michael Malice's The Anarchist Handbook,
Mhm.
but it wasn't the number of those weren't the things that really persuaded me of this.
Sure.
So this book is a collection of everything that persuaded me to go from
Ah,
progressivism to conservatism to voluntarism. So this is the book when I tell anyone who's politically interested, I go, you might not end up agreeing with us, but if you at least want to know that this
right.
is a philosophy going back, I mean, thousands of years, but at least to 1850. We have a
Right.
great guy in France, Frederick Bastiat, who does a
My
great job
favorite.
laying out these principles. Yep, he's got a chapter in here. That's just a collection of quotes. So it would be hard it was really hard for me to read the law the
Sure.
first time. I think I was like 13, and I read it because Ron Paul was asked, what book would you recommend? He said the law.
I
read
say
it.
that all the time. That's mine too.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, so I read it and I go, there's not much in this book. This isn't a very good book. Well, that was just me being ignorant. I didn't
Right.
understand. I didn't appreciate what I was reading. I read it again years later and I go, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. So I took quotes from that book in hopes of increasing the likelihood
Mhm.
people who disagree with us would say, you know what, I'm not going to read all 318 pages, but I'll check out the free PDF and read these 2 sections from the
Right.
law or something
No,
like
I
that.
love that because what
That's how
you're
I
doing is
did
you're actually validating the ideas, right? Not just because what I deal with all the time is I talk to people, they always go, "You libertarians, you guys don't know anything, you're crazy, whatever." I always get that. But you're actually saying, no, here's a book that will show you that whether you're left or right, that you can move towards that. I think that's great. That's a great thing. By the way, you already have fans. John says, great guest. So you've already got fans.
Thank you, John.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Keith Wright, who actually literally rhymes your name, says, I just recently bought the book. Looks good. I love that. You already got friends. I love it.
What a great audience. Thank you.
So I guess the point I want to ask you though is you have a section, and you've written about this yourself a little bit, the idea of ending the culture war. Now I bring that up because in New York, that's all we do is culture war. I mean, the country's in culture war, but where I am in New York is culture war. As the world burns, everyone worries about the culture war. So at least I'll be on the right side of the culture war when my house goes up in flames. I mean, that's kind of how people are right now. So if you have a way to help end this culture war, my ears are wide open, my friend. Please help me out with this.
It seems like whenever I was attempting to learn about politics, either through the media, TV media, the newspapers, professors, asking friends and family, it always seemed like there was a division, as
Mhm.
Thomas Sowell famously said. People want heroes to love and villains to
Yes.
hate. That's really what they're going after. It
100%.
seemed like the thing about these villains was nothing I could really sink my teeth into. It's the rich. Well, I know some
Right.
rich people and they're nice, and I'm actually rich compared to a lot of people in a third world, even though I'm not exactly driving a Maserati over here.
Right.
So is being rich necessarily bad? If a poor person became rich, is that something uniquely evil? And then it changed to, well, it's actually the Muslims, both the Taliban and Al Qaeda. So it's really Muslims in the Middle East. We could have peace on earth if they didn't just hate us so much for our freedoms. And then you look into that story, and it turns out it's blowback from Iraqi sanctions, the bases in Saudi Arabia, and allying with Israel while they commit atrocities against the Palestinians. So I go, all of these divides are totally fake. And what do we have today? We have to be anti all of Russia and pro all of Ukraine.
Right.
We have to even support Al Qaeda in some cases when they're Jabhat al-Nusra fighting Assad.
Right.
And so all of these divides, and then of course, men versus women, black versus white. I'm waiting for old versus young. That's going to come out here soon. Well, it sometimes does with education and social security.
Right. Sure.
So I go, all of these
Or
divides.
even with just the recent, forgivingness of loans.
Yeah.
That's
really
happening too. Sure, they're bringing that up also. Of course. Yes. I think you're totally right. Yes.
So all of these divides, it seemed like I couldn't really, bite into and get something principled out of them.
Mhm.
And then I came across. I really wish I had been taking notes earlier in my research. But if I had to guess, it would be Ron Paul who introduced me to the idea that there is a divide. People in the world who achieve their ends voluntarily versus those who do so violently.
Sure.
And the biggest manifestation of this violence, in this natural selection process of, someone doing it on a small scale is likely to get caught, is likely to get isolated with. The most successful people occupy an institution called government. Now, government does a lot of things. They do, schools and roads and all this. None of those are unique defining characteristics of this thing called government. The only thing that we could say is unique about it is it has the wide scale recognized right to initiate aggression against peaceful people, make unilateral contracts, and make calls on property they didn't justly acquire through homesteading or voluntary exchange. So once I started hearing, it's not rich versus poor, it's not white versus black, it's not foreigner versus domestic person. Those are accidents of birth. Someone's born and we already know if they're the good guy or the bad guy.
Right.
No matter what they do for the rest of their life, we know their skin color. Maybe if they can get accepted and get a license and a passport, then they could become a good guy. I mean, it's just so brutally exhausting. So
before you go there, though, Gene is asking an important question. Gene says, what's the name of the book and how does the author spell his last name? So she wants to buy this thing. So you better help her out, Keith. Come on, help her out.
The name of the book is The Voluntaryist Handbook. My last name is Knight, Knight. First name is Keith, Keith.
So can they just go to Twitter and get the book? Do they have to go to the website and get the book? How do they get the book?
You can go to Amazon.com. You can go to BarnesandNoble.com, and it's for sale there, both Nook and paperback. I know a lot of people don't like Amazon, so I got on Barnes and Noble. If you don't have the money because you paid off your student loans only for them to be forgiven for everyone else, there's a free PDF on Odyssey.com. You can also get a free PDF on archive.org. That's what I link a lot of people to who are progressives, conservatives, minarchists, who are sort of interested, but they don't want to be funding, someone terrible like us.
Gotcha. Philip is now bugging me. He says, okay, boomer, old versus young. All right, Phil, I'm a Gen Xer, by the way, wise guy. I'm not a boomer. I'm a Gen Xer. I act like a boomer sometimes, but I am a Gen Xer. So yes. So Keith, what are you? What generation do you fall into?
1996. I'd be a millennial.
You're a millennial. There we go. Millennial. Yeah. I'm a Gen Xer. So Phil, you're like a Gen Z baby. I'm kidding. I'm just teasing you. I'm sorry. Keep going, Keith. I apologize.
So once I was able to really find a principal distinction as to whether I can now determine who is the good guy and who's the bad guy in the situation, even when it's like very isolated, is it Israel versus Palestine? I was raised Jewish and I went to temple. I was bar mitzvahed and everything. So my understanding of the Israel-Palestine conflict was, it's close to like fake or a Santa Claus fairy tale that you can get. It was like Israel had just always existed and Jews were living there. And then people started hating us because we were the chosen ones. It was so dumbed down and it's very sad. And it doesn't help.
Hold on. I want to go to an important part. You said you went from, if I remember what you told me, you said you went from progressive to conservative to voluntarist. Is that correct?
Yeah.
What made you a progressive? What made you go there? Was your family progressive? Were your friends progressive? Like, what made you progressive in the first place? Most people, not all obviously, but most people, they tend to initially absorb their politics from their community, right? That's what most do. Was that you or something different?
Yes, that was me. I was so young at the time. Obama was running in 2008, and we would go up to my grandparents' house in Sedona. And when you're a kid, you can't appreciate the beauty of Sedona or the hiking and all that stuff. So we would just sit around, and I'd listen to them talk politics. And it just seemed like the divide at the time was there's people who want to give who want to give others things. The Democrats want to give people housing. They want to give people health care. But other people, literally, not just a few, millions of people vote for others to just not have those things. And it just seemed so incredibly ridiculous that the only explanation is they're suckers for the rich, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, the Koch brothers, or they really do not like the fact that the up-and-coming representative of this democratic ideal is a black gentleman. So therefore, it's a mixture of classism and racism, and that's what we need to start focusing on, because how could you be against giving someone something for free? And then it was sort of hate watching someone like Glenn Beck, because it really was shocking to be, 12 years old and you think there's millions of people who just don't want others to have food. This is totally wild.
I see. I gotcha. So that's kind of where you came as a progressive.
Yeah.
But
And
then was there a moment where you were like, no? Do you remember a moment where you're like, no, this isn't working? And if you did you immediately become a conservative, or was there some space in between?
it was very slow,
It was slow.
going from every monolith from one progressive to
Mhm.
conservative. I had watched Glenn Beck because I go, I got to see what these people are saying. I
Right.
mean, it makes no sense. Are they just so evil? Are they so dumb? Maybe we just need to fund education more and sort of weed these idiots out of society. And he
It's
had
just
mentioned
underfunded, Keith. That's the problem.
it's always underfunded. Um, so Glenn Beck had made the point that a part of the Affordable Care Act, of course, more regulations, you're going to have a lower supply, higher cost of healthcare. There's a lot of utilitarian discussions. He
Mhm.
then mentioned an aspect of it called the individual mandate.
Mm,
And he said, look at this. It's some people, government, forcing you to do something for your alleged benefit. But if it's really for your benefit, you should be able to do it voluntarily. So this law is unjust inherently because it
I
forces
see.
totally peaceful people. It's not like we're going to pedophiles and rapists and thieves. A peaceful person can't just live the way they want to without the state mandating they buy
Got it.
something, and not just the state, this total jerk of a total jerk who's running the system at the time. um
So to be clear, someone like Glenn Beck that you initially were watching almost like a hate watch, like, these are the bad guys. You got to see what the bad guys are doing. That someone like a Glenn Beck actually began to move you away from what your community was kind of telling you was right.
yeah, that
Okay,
that's what happened. And
that's
then
great.
and then it was surprising to see someone like Ron Paul talk about the actual cause of terrorism, because a part of it had to not add up. I mean, people just hated us for our freedoms, and then we increased the size of government. Government's here to keep us safe. Yet after an attack, they get more money and more power. So it's like it didn't make sense. But what do I know? I'm just a
So let
civilian.
me go to the
Yeah.
next piece then, if I could. You were progressive, watching shows like Glenn Beck and the like. You begin to shift more towards conservative. Did you become a hardcore conservative? Because I noticed that many times when people feel strongly about one, and then when they turn hard. I think it's a common thing I find. Not always, but I think it's common that I'm a hardcore leftist, and then they become right. They become a hardcore right, or they're right, they go left, they can become a hardcore left. The same personality of being I'm all in tends to simply shift to the other side. Did you find yourself that way, or were you more kind of a middle of the road conservative?
I was definitely a hardcore
You were
conservative,
hardcore.
and
Mhm.
and even now, and I think you're totally right with that observation. I think what happens is you certainly at some point you feel like you've been scammed. I
Mm,
really felt like I had been lied to.
yep.
America invented slavery, capitalism invented poverty. To find out those things were not even close to being true, I was so pissed off that I wasn't sort of interested in passively mentioning, the ideas that I now believe in. I was like, I'm kind of waging an intellectual war on these people. I'm going to make them feel like trash just like they did to me, and
Well,
help
it's
people,
funny.
get educated in the meantime.
You say that, and there's a thing that I think you and I share on this. What I always wanted to believe as I was growing up was that somebody would save us. I wanted to believe in the magic savior. I did. I wanted to believe that, I'm a bit older than you. So, like when Ross Perot came around in the 90s, I was like, oh, there's our savior. He'll make it all right, right? He'll win. And then all of a sudden, he'll use his magic wand and America will be perfect. I wanted to believe that. And then when he couldn't do it and that wasn't real, I wanted to believe Ralph Nader could do it because he's the guy who's not the two bad guys. So he'll use his magic wand and fix things. And then I was very much out of it. But when Obama came, I wanted to believe it still. And I thought that in 2008 that Obama could do it. I did. I believed it. And I know people get mad at me, but I'm telling you the truth. I believed it. I was like, okay, I'm in. I'm with the thing. He's the guy. He's the magic guy. He's gonna do it, right? He's different. He's not like the rest of them. Well, clearly that wasn't true. But that's what I believed. So, but by 2010, it was the first time to kind of the way you felt, it was the first time I felt betrayed. The previous presidents, I never thought they were going to be good. So if they weren't good, so what? I didn't expect it.
Yeah.
But I thought Obama was going to be good. I thought it was going to be different. I thought he was going to be the guy who was going to do the thing. And when he didn't, that is when I checked out. That is when I was like, you know what? I was so betrayed by that. I was like, I'm out. I have checked out. I'm done. And that's when I was open to hearing Gary Johnson in 2012. And I feel like it was similar with you. Once you got it, you then became open to hear Ron Paul. Is that a similar feeling or no?
Definitely. So once you feel like you've gotten screwed by this thing, whether it's the establishment, the cathedral, the government, the neocons, whatever, then it's like you're almost totally open to anything. So when I heard something like, Cheney ordered a stand down for NORAD on 9/11, I say, well, what's the evidence? I won't dismiss that. That's something these people could do. Or when I hear someone say, the state's inherently illegitimate and everything should be privatized or voluntarized, I go, well, I don't agree, but I'm open to it. So now I'll listen to it. Whereas before, I would have clearly dismissed those. Don't waste a second of my time. You might as well be flat earth and Loch Ness monster nonsense. Right. Once I felt like I had been totally tricked, especially with a lot of economic things. I mean, I had just always thought if you didn't support the minimum wage, you could only hate the poor. How could you
of course.
How could you not? Why do you not want to help a person who's poor?
Right.
And then I was introduced to the idea that when you increase the cost of something, people with the fewest skills are less likely to get their foot in the door. They're less likely to get on the job experience and then increase their skill set and demand a higher wage in the future. Right. Also, high school and college are 4 years of getting paid $0 an hour. So maybe I could do it for $1 an hour or $1 or $2, or maybe I just own myself and I can make whatever contracts I want. And you guys can sort of piss off a little. So the fact that I had been so confident that anyone who thought the minimum wage was illegitimate was just an evil person. I really felt like I had been sort of stabbed in the back by people who I had just assumed they were telling me the truth. They know what's best. They have the teaching licenses. I just need to sit back and listen. Then I was willing to listen to things like voluntarism.
Yes, I agree completely. I have a couple pieces I want to bring up here. Phil says he wasn't calling you a woman. I know, Phil. I'm teasing you, brother. I know. I'm teasing you. Don't worry about it. It's all good. I'm totally teasing you. No worries whatsoever. Ryan has a hardcore question. Ryan says, do you agree taxation is theft regardless of needs of society?
I do. Taxation would be a unique way of acquiring property where only one group has the right to do it. So if it was legitimate, we'd have no problem with the Sharpe way issuing taxes. Walmart issues taxes. Yeah. Amazon issues taxes. Everyone could go around issuing taxes on everyone else's income.
Let's do that.
You're right. Great
I
idea.
Like that one. That's a good idea. Let's do that.
We just came up with it. So what taxation does is it doesn't allow people to voluntarily disassociate with people that they don't see value in trading with, and it creates a disincentive. But as you said, regardless of the needs of society. So maybe sometimes you can justify stealing, a piece of bread to save someone's life. But notice that in that example, it's not if someone's starving, then only a group called government could steal to save their lives. So no need for this double standard. Taxation is theft because it necessarily relies on some people issuing threats against the property or income of other people. And it's not about being cheap. It's about really hating what's then done with this money. People are put in cages for victimless drug crimes with this money. This gives the most evil people on the planet tons of power. It gives Donald Rumsfeld the power to wage war. And it increases the influence of Dick Cheney. I mean, terrible things are done with this money that cause so much suffering. So it's theft inherently, and it's a bat signal attracting the most evil people in society to control those funds. So yeah, taxation's theft since it relies on initiating aggression against a peaceful person.
So if that's true, why? I mean, if you just said, hey, are you for theft? People would say, no, theft is terrible. But if you say, are you for taxation? Why do the vast majority of Americans go, yeah, it's the price for society. So I'm okay. Take my money. In fact, every time they talk to Americans, there's a chunk that will actually say, we're not taxed enough. And there's a chunk that will say, we're taxed right enough. And then a chunk that will say, we're taxed, but too much. But still, the vast majority of Americans still think taxation is a good and just and appropriate thing. Why do you think that's true if it's theft?
The primary justification, I think, or the primary explanation is simply status quo bias. This
Got
is the concept that because something has existed for so long, it's extraordinarily unlikely that, look, I'm 20, 30, 40, and this guy Larry Sharpe is telling me about the downside of taxation. Buddy, I've been around a while. If this were true, I would have heard of it. This is how a lot of things are. Other countries for a very long time. Therefore, it's very legitimate. Also, there is a concentrated costs and dispersed benefit disincentive involved. So if I do a ton of research and find out whether or not taxation is morally justified or really immoral, it's not necessary that Biden's going to call me, ask for my opinion, and then change legislation as a causal result.
He probably should, Keith. I mean, he probably should do that.
It would take a ton of work on your end, and you'd have very little, if any, effect. And in the meantime, you might isolate people who think, well, why don't you just move to Somalia? What do you hate the fire department? You don't support the troops or anything? Don't you know my friend lost his life in the war? How could you be anti-government terrorist like this? Yeah, I would say status quo bias and concentrated costs and externalized benefits or heavily minimized benefits are probably the primary explanations for why people haven't recognized something so obvious.
Got you. Well, if you guys are liking what you're hearing, I know a lot of you are. I see the comments. Do me a favor, like and comment and share this. It does matter. It does help tremendously in moving this forward and getting more people to see it. But I got to go one step further. You guys know I have a sponsor. It's theadvocates.org. You need to go to the world's smallest political quiz. Click that link right there that's in the description and share that into other Facebook pages, on Twitter. Share that in a place so that people can go and take that quiz, and they may realize they are more moderate or more libertarian than they think. They may not be caught in the actual culture war that they think they're caught in. How do we change that? By taking the world's smallest political quiz, sharing it with others, and if you take it and share your results. Show people that you've taken it. Let them see it. The more time you spend doing this, the more conversations you can have. And as you hear what Keith is talking about, his entire book is about you having conversations, both with yourself and with those you love and with those you care about, and moving them from either conservative to progressive to voluntarist, or conservative to progressive, progressive to conservative to voluntary, whatever. They're going to come to us, whatever the path. But it's going to take not some magic pill. It's going to take hundreds of conversations. This quiz helps, and so does the book. So please pay attention and follow him on Libertarian Inst on Twitter. And if you want to follow me, you know me, LarrySharpe.com. All good. I want to grab one more comment if I could. I got a bunch of people talking about this. Missy says, this all sounds very interesting. I just purchased the book. Well, there we go.
Thank you very much, Missy. I greatly appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy it.
Rocking and rolling. Daniel says, Larry, you just described how so many people felt about Trump in 2016 and 2020. I wish I voted for Gary. I think he means Gary Johnson. But I was 4 years behind you and voted for Joe. I voted for Joe, too. I mean, I've been voting for libertarians since Gary Johnson. 2012 is when I came aboard. But I think that's really when things moved towards me. And Ryan, by the way, has a hashtag for you. Ryan says, voluntarism works. Hashtag. Not too shabby.
I will start using that every time I see two people exchange in a mutually beneficial exchange.
There we go.
I'll have no time for anything else.
So let's walk further down that road. If I understand what you were actually saying, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. I feel like what you're saying is the way to end the culture war is to change in someone's head the left-right paradigm, right? And to change it, that's not about left, it's not about right, it's about coercion versus persuasion. Is that, did I read that correctly, or am I off?
The verbiage that's used in the book towards the beginning by Don Boudreaux is coercivists versus voluntarists. So you can There's definitely benefits to the leftist mindset and the rightist. I think they certainly can be complementary in a lot of ways. But when it comes to a lot of things that are left and right, aren't necessarily tied to the coercive aspects that come to fruition when you get someone on the right in power or someone on the left in power. So whether
Okay.
it's I really care about equality and the dignity of each individual, it's a non sequitur to say that person therefore advocates the existence of a state. So I don't know if it's necessarily left versus right. It's coercivists versus voluntarists, and it's not arbitrary differences. It's the principal difference of
Got it.
do you achieve your ends peacefully or violently? That is what I'm trying to communicate here.
So the reason why I use the word persuasion is because I think that there is, and again, if you think I'm off on this, when I talk to people about voluntarism or often libertarianism, what I often hear is people believe there is a aloneness to it, a lone wolf aspect to voluntarism, right? That I'm going to be all by myself and I'm going to do my own thing. And I've always said it's not about doing it yourself. It's about making sure that we all volunteer to do it. You could have 1,000 volunteers. It could be a massive army of people who all volunteered to work on the project or do the thing or whatever the case may be. So I tend to use persuasion because I want people to realize that you don't lose your First Amendment rights and that you can still say, hey, I think everybody should wear blue shirts. You're wrong if you don't wear a cool blue shirt. But I'm not going to force you to wear a cool blue shirt, but I'm going to try to talk you into it because I think it's the right thing for all of us to wear cool blue shirts. By the way, that is true. So anyway, but because I'm wearing a blue shirt. But anyway, the point being that that's why I use persuasion, because I feel like I want the image to be, we can still be part of a team. We can still be activists, right? We can still get stuff done, right? We can still move things, but we're moving it through our works, through our example, through our community versus just, if you want to do it with me, you can. I mean, am I off on this?
I think that's a great approach. That is an approach that James Harrigan and Anthony Davies take in their book, Cooperation or Coercion. So they say also there's a section here titled Social Cooperation by Sheldon Richman. He's a left libertarian and he makes a great case for this, that anything you do when you're reading a book all by yourself, well, I bet you're using a light, which you didn't invent. You probably didn't write the book. You probably didn't chop down the tree to make the paper. You didn't invent the language that the book is written in. Anytime you think you're doing something by yourself, it's actually the result of millions of people cooperating. It's the initial World Wide Web that actually exists. You're only alive because other people made food and you traded with them. So we're constantly engaged in doing things that affect or are a result of other people's actions. So now the question is not things we do alone versus things we do together. Alone doesn't exist. The question is, are we going to cooperate peacefully, or are some people going to initiate violence against others? Are some people literally going to claim ownership over the bodies of others? And I don't just say that to be, the sort of bombastic and, just try to make a slavery analogy, but literally when it comes to something like wars that murder people, that is literally the mindset of disrespecting self-ownership, with putting people in jail for victimless crimes. Julian Assange might be the best case. The cops killing Tony Timpa on camera, knowing they could get away with it, and it's on their body cam footage. I mean, this is the mindset that some people own the bodies of others. It's been around for a while, and I hope this book can defeat it.
I know I'm pushing on a culture war thing because I just feel it's so salient with us right now, right? But then how do you get through to somebody who says, Keith, you don't get it. These people, whoever are the other, these people are evil, right? So it's okay if we own their bodies or send them to war or put them in jail or dehumanize them in whatever way we think appropriate, right? You saw recently Sam Harris. You might have heard that. Sam Harris talked about how he thought it was fine to have a conspiracy and to end democracy as long as Trump doesn't get into power. And people took it as he doesn't like Trump. And I was like, no. He believes that Trump is literally evil and therefore you can do anything to stop him. That's clearly where his mind is. So you're saying, let's shift into this mode, but there are groups of people who think the other is evil. right? Keith, they're not gonna listen to you. Keith, they're evil, right? The lefty people are gonna kill us, or the righty people are gonna kill us. So they're not gonna listen to you because they're evil. And because they're evil, do I really have to give them respect and listen to them and stuff? Can't I go off and kill them and put them in jail? I mean, they're evil. How do we get past that mindset?
So the philosophy of voluntarism, of self-ownership, is not just about non-aggression. It's also about the self-defense principle. So
Okay.
this allows people to harmonize their own interests. It's not a suicide pact that says, look, if someone's raping another person, start a petition and try to ask them to stop politely. No, that's initiating violence. Respect for the self-ownership is defending that innocent person unapologetically
Okay.
with minimal necessary force. So, if someone's pushing you versus if someone's committing rape, of course, you can have proportionality. So voluntarism does allow for self-defense. Second, it's important to realize that we can get along with the vast majority of people, even ones that we would consider evil, in non-political spheres. So Mormons, I know a lot of Mormons in Gilbert and Mesa in Arizona. They're very populated over here. Now, a lot of them think that me and my friends are going to burn in a fiery pit for all of eternity. And it's terrible. We're living in sin by not giving 10% of our annual income to the LDS church.
I've thought that about you, Keith. I have.
And somehow
Yes.
we are still able to cooperate. Which is more offensive? You don't want to chip in for schooling, or you want me to burn in hell for all of eternity? Well,
Point taken.
If my entire existence is just me not appreciating the creator of the universe, and they understand that other people think their entire life is lived on a lie that's so stupid, I can't believe anyone believes that fake tablet story. I mean, these people should be cutting each other's heads off. So notice that in the political sphere, these people would see each other as totally evil, because the only way for them to get their way would be to coerce millions into Mormonism or coerce millions into atheism. You
Right.
can't have this self-ownership everyone chooses. So it's important to realize that the political process turns good people into bad because of the incentives. And also, I'm not telling people to totally lay down their sword and only use words. You have the right to defend yourself. To reject the principle of self-defense is to accept the notion of slavery or some people owning others, and to just be like, you know what, some people murder others. Well, I hope they eventually learn their lesson. So voluntarism, I believe, does answer that.
Got it. Okay. Derek says taxation is the price we pay to avoid getting murdered by the IRS. Derek, you're not wrong, brother. You're not wrong. Absolutely. Thomas says student loan forgiveness is a bank bailout disguised as caring about citizens. The DNC and RNC have not done anything in the last more than 20 years with the primary goal of helping American voters. They work for the elite and big businesses who pay for their elections. This is one of the biggest issues that I know you talk about, the idea of no matter what happens, the more government goes along, the more it gets bigger and bigger, and the more that's what happens. I mean, isn't that part of what's in the book?
Yeah, and if you don't recognize the importance of voluntarism, then the state will be able to capitalize off of anything that really happens. So if they totally monopolize education, well, then they control all the curriculum, and and that's how they implement their worldview. And well, what if there's school choice? Well, now they might be able to influence the curriculum of other schools because they're getting funding from the state. So what's defined as a school there's going to be some criteria. And in order to meet the criteria, you'll just, have to teach the 1619 Project. You'll have to teach about how bin Laden hates us because women go to school in America. Just these objective facts that can't be refuted.
That's true. Yes, of course.
So under anything that happens, or take terrorism, if there's a lot of terrorism where we need a big government to keep us safe. If we're totally safe, thank God we're safe. We need more government to keep it this way. If we don't have more government, these bad things are going to happen. Once you grant some people the right to rule others, from there, it's just excuses of, okay, now how can I increase this power? It's like a terrible drug. Whereas in the free market, the freedom to disassociate, the freedom to stop funding bad people is the proper cleansing mechanism for a society to have. So it still recognizes that there's going to be inequality, and there's going to be elites. Some people are going to have a lot more power than others. not many people could go on Patrick Bet David's show and knock it out of the park like you and Spike and Dave did. Those inequalities are always going to exist. The question is, are we going to what is our relationship with other people going to be if they're at higher income levels? Is it going to be they still don't get a penny out of our pocket unless we voluntarily give it to them? Or is it going to be they could tax whatever and they have a central bank to print the rest?
Well, look, the piece I want to bring up, Raz, you used a phrase called the free market. And I live in New York City. That phrase is evil.
Mm-hmm.
Because that phrase, New York City people, most of them, not all, but literally 8 out of 10 at least, if not more, think free market means, this is how they hear it, crony capitalism, big business wins. That's what they hear. Now, you and I know in a free market that's not true, but this is what they believe. So very often you will find me use the phrase consumer driven.
Yeah.
And so I would say in a consumer driven system, this would be different. Because consumer driven, the feeling is it's bottom up. Now, free market is bottom up, but because of the system we've had, it sounds and feels like top down.
Yeah.
Which is why I will very often use consumer driven. Most people will at least hear that phrase. And again, I say this because I guess I'm the candidate, so I have to worry about people hearing things well. So that's what I use all the time. So yeah. Kyle
good.
says, I had been a liberal when I was younger for the same reasons this guy had. I did switch to Republican, though. I had gone partyless until I found out about the Libertarian Party. Huh, okay.
So one of the most important things that but progressives have told me, that some have been convinced, especially after the Biden years, after Hillary stole the election from Bernie Sanders and the DNC. This is one of the quotes. This is on page 44 of my book in the quotes section. This is from Thomas Sowell. He said, "The very same people who say that government has no right to interfere with sexual activity between consenting adults believe that the government has every right to interfere with the economic activity between consenting adults." So when you take something they already believe in, the right of gay adults to not only engage in intercourse, but also to contract in the form of getting married. Well, if you can have this sort of anarchy in marriage where I dedicate my life to one person, well, can I go to the sandwich shop without 50,000 regulations? Can I paint my shed? Well, then certainly I would be able to engage in any other action so long as I'm not initiating aggression or fraud against peaceful people. So when you're talking to people like progressives, these things do a great job of planting the seed, because for every reason, every justification for, well, we should regulate business because they've done bad things, is literally like saying we should regulate homosexuality because of monkeypox spreading. It's that offensive and it's that unjustified to do. So taking something they already believe in and extending it is a lot different than saying, I have this new belief system, you should embrace this, and throw out whatever you believe in.
So let me walk down that road, because you brought up Thomas Sowell and progressives. Most people don't know. I speak to a lot of the left whenever I possibly can. And people think I'm crazy for speaking to the left, but I try to as much as I can. And one of the reasons why I do it is because Thomas Sowell used to be a Marxist. And most people don't know that. He came from the left. He's one of our best, and he came from the left. So why wouldn't I still want to talk to the left? And you talk about progressives. I agree. We need left and right to join us. This has to be a full-on American thing. Bring them all aboard. I completely agree. But you talk about an idea of trying to have an alliance with, I guess, the angry left, or the pushed aside left. And I think a lot of libertarians think that's a crazy idea. I'm kind of on board with you, but tell me why you think that's a good idea or important.
So again, understanding the roots of the philosophy, where you could sort of dismiss the non sequiturs that so often come from the left. We need equality. Therefore, this group called government should coercively redistribute resources. You could take the principle of equality and say, I just don't have any double standards. If I can't do it, well, then why can Barack Obama or Donald Trump or Vladimir Putin? I just believe people should be equal. So if I don't have the right to issue taxes or monopolize a currency, Neither does James Madison or James O'Keefe or anyone else. So that concept of equality alone, you can really find an actual bridge that could occur. In this article I wrote, I titled it "The Necessary Alliance Between the Dissident Left and Libertarians."
Oh, dissident left. Sorry,
Yeah.
I forgot when I read it. I forgot the word you used. I'm sorry. Dissident left. Thank you.
So here are 5 assumptions that libertarians and people on the dissident left have that not everyone else has that that we share. So examples of people I use are Max Blumenthal, Glenn Greenwald, Jimmy Dore, Michael Tracy, and Caitlin Johnstone. So the first thing is, this is Karl Marx's theory of history. I don't use his name because I don't want to poison the well. But first, there is a small, unjust, parasitic ruling class which rules over the masses at the expense of the masses. A lot of people disagree with that and say government is the people. There is no some ruling elite. That's just a conspiracy theory. The second thing that we can agree on with them is the ruling class is ideologically held together by its interest in keeping the system of exploitation ongoing, as opposed to they just live by public opinion. Third, rulers never willingly retreat or give up their power. Only an increase in class consciousness by the exploited can remedy this. Whereas other people say, well, it's just about passing laws and electing the right people. If you haven't changed public opinion outside of the voting booth to see what people recognize as legitimate and illegitimate, large-scale change is not likely to happen. Fourth, an ideological superstructure, media, education, advertising, courts, a system of property rights, police, exists to keep the ruling class in power, for the ruling class has an inherent tendency to be corrupted, concentrated, and centralized. Final one, inherent corruption plus more centralization equals more instability, resulting in a crumbling of the system, giving rise to a mass realization or class consciousness by the exploited that an unjust system of exploitation should be replaced by a system of cooperation and mutual benefit. So, in short, Karl Marx is totally right, so long as the villain is not the rich, so long as the villain is people who initiate aggression to achieve their ends, in this case, the state. So if you're a leftist who cares about the little guy, make sure no one can violate the dignity of the little guy in the absence of their consent.
I like the talk, but I'm also concerned about why. Right? Why not look for already libertarians or people who have checked out or whatever. You pick the thing, right? You're saying dissident left specifically, and I'm curious as to why it's that.
Because I was wondering, why is it that I love Jimmy Dore and I love Michael Tracy and I can't stand people like David Bose or Nick Sarwark or Joe Jorgensen blatantly lied about Dave Smith and the 12 shots, ridiculous nonsense. So why is it that I can't stand those people, but I love the Jimmy Dores of the world and the Aaron Mates and the Matt Taibbis? And the reason is it's because what they get most passionate about. And in this case, with the dissident left, nothing comes close to their hatred of the evils of the warfare state and the corporate state, which relies heavily on bailouts at the expense of others. So because that's what gets them passionate, I see them and I go, gosh, I get that there's a lot of economic disagreements that we have in central banking, we disagree on, and state education or state schooling. I refuse to call it education. There has to be something there. So I tried to really narrow it down, and it's an article in here titled "An Austrian Marxist Class Analysis" by Hans Hoppe. So he originally came up with the idea. I tried to modernize it in this article that I was reading to you. His is written for academics. I tried to make it so the average progressive could read and understand this. So that's my reasoning, because they get so passionate about the most important thing.
There's a point that I've been saying is that I think if you are someone who is a Democrat or lean left, the Democratic Party hasn't made you happy, right? They haven't given you what you want. The results that you're looking for, they haven't given you. And I think if we could show them how we could give them the results that they're looking for, I think you're right. I think the left could come to us if we can show them, hey, we have a way of giving you what you want, right? You want to beat up the man? We could do that too, right? We can tell you how to beat up the man. Of course we can. I think you have that. That's my point. I like that. That's good. Elliot says, I don't know if you believe it, but Elliot says, is the oncoming economic collapse, is it coordinated on purpose, intending to force an essentialization of economic energy and food supply? Do you think that this is being done on purpose, or is this just happening? Do you have an opinion on this, Keith?
Yes, there's certainly an incentive for such a thing to take place, but also, so that could be the long-term incentive, but also there's the short-term incentive of the people who have a lot of power and influence just have no incentive to say, well, we might need to stop this gravy train. We might need to start voluntarizing things. If you guys don't want to chip in for this stuff, we got to let interest rates be decided by free market exchanges, not Janet Yellen anymore. That would take so much for someone to say, and they would never get on the media, so it doesn't really make sense. So in that sense, it can certainly be said to be on purpose. I don't
feel
know if
like it's just laziness almost. Like I feel like to your point, if you really wanted to make, say you become, mayor or congressman or whatever, and you're like, wow, this system's terrible. We have to fix it. Oh my God, libertarians are right. For you to be able to make anything happen, you're moving a mountain. Or just take the money and shut up, man. Like, that's kind of what happens when they walk in, right? Take the money, shut up, stop rocking the boat. Here's some cash. Don't you like being on TV and stuff? Look, come on, we'll put you on CNN or put you on Fox, whatever. Just, you get a couple, look, we get a little cash on the side. We give you a little job afterwards. Just, is it really that important to you? And I think a lot of people go, money's nice. That's what I think happens often. And maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like the simplest answer is probably the actual answer. I don't think it's on purpose. I don't think they're savvy enough.
And you have to realize the human mind's ability to justify itself. So
yes.
As if we had, been around while the Japanese emperor was ordering people to go in and murder Chinese civilians, the likelihood that we would have, been totally different than how people in Japan were at the time, they would have justified it. Well, you know what? If that communist Mao Zedong is going to come over and take over China, if we don't go in there, I don't love it, but that's what you got to do. Or say the same thing about slavery historically. One of the most famous examples, or the most important one, would be Jeffrey Epstein's justification for his horrible crimes. This is according to Brad Edwards, who was an attorney for Virginia Roberts and close with Maria Farmer, a lot of the victims. Brad Edwards, very reliable source, by the way. That's why I believe this. I've followed his work for a while. He got to Jeffrey Epstein and he said, why are you fighting this? We got, 52 girls who have the same exact story. Very few of them know each other. What's your end game here? And Epstein more or less laughed it off and said, I took these poor girls and gave them the life of luxury that all their friends would probably kill for.
Wow.
So when you take something like
that's some cope right there. Wow.
Yeah. Well, Richard Spencer, was asked about, can't you admit that was terrible to, take people from Africa and enslave them? And he said, the blacks have it a lot better in America than they would have had it in Africa. Therefore, they've directly benefited, and and blacks should actually support a system today of white supremacy because it's so beneficial for them. Anytime someone wants to justify something, the human brain's ability to do so, it just knows no bounds. Other than that, maybe it could be. Very well could be on purpose, because there's that Klaus Schwab is just so evil. Fauci is incredibly evil. Cheney, obviously. So it very well could be, but that's something that's so hard to prove. And even if I could prove it, then people would say, oh, we just have to elect the right people who aren't conspiring against us.
And then everything will be great.
No.
Yes,
we're back to where we started.
We're back to exactly. It's all good. I love it. It's good. CT is your man. He says, Keith's the man. It sounds like that's true. I like that. You have fans. Cooper. So if you care about Keith, you know what you can do? You can follow him on Twitter. Libertarian Inst, INST on Twitter. So if you like to, or also head up to his website. What's your website?
Libertarianinstitute.org.
Bingo. Head on over there if you like it. Also, do me a favor. Support this show, the World's Smallest Political Quiz. If you could take that, share that in other places so that people are having more conversations. This kind of conversation has to happen more and more and more if people care. then they can watch this interview and have conversations. More conversations, the better off we're going to be. And someone actually just said here, hold on. Kelly just said, I took it after you went live the other night. It confirmed what I've known since I was 15. I'm an anarchist libertarian. Kelly, you are hardcore. I really like how that quiz could help open people's eyes to what they really align with. Well done, whoever created it. It's great. Yes, it's actually called the Nolan chart. And it was created like 50 years ago. So it was good. So I appreciate that, Kellen. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
I will plug this as well because I met those guys at YAL 2022 in Florida, the conference. They had a great table. Everyone was so nice. It was they had to have had more people than anyone else. Just circled around taking the quiz. Each question would lead to a big conversation. I think World's Smallest Political Quiz is an excellent contribution to at least lowering the amount of tensity that we have because you're asking open-ended questions in a conversational format.
Absolutely, 100%. Ryan says, nice mug, Larry Sharpe. How can I get one? Here's a nice mug. It is. It's my Sharpeway mug. Yes, you can. You can go to sharpeway.com and click shop and you get a cool mug. Or you can get a Larry Sharpe for Governor one too. LarrySharpe.com/shop. Either way, cool mugs are all the rave. Absolutely, 100%. Yes, I love that. Bill, he's been watching you. Bill says, I was just listening to Keith on Part of the Problem. He's a great voice for liberty and worth the follow on all social media. You've got some friends here, Keith. Look at you go.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that, sir.
I like that. Andrew says, Lib Unity. Oh, I like that, Andrew. I like that idea. I do. It's hard to get, right? But I think it's great. The more we can be together, I think that's going to help us tremendously. It's just very challenging to me. So Danny says, that makes no sense to me. The left loves big government. You know, what I get from this, Danny, is that I feel like the left, for many people, they don't really understand that there's actually a division there. There's what people on the left call leftists and what they call liberals. What people on the left call liberals, these are more like people who like the more standardized Democratic Party, right? That type. And leftists, they're more hardcore. They're more about socialism and taking action and fighting the establishment. That's kind of how they see it. And the best example I can give you is if you look at someone like Howie Hawkins. Howie Hawkins of the Green Party was also the socialist presidential candidate back in 2020. Howie Hawkins is pro-Second Amendment. Why? Because he's hardcore socialist. You go left enough, you get your guns back, right? Because that's how that works. You go far enough left, you get the guns back. So yeah, I got you that one, Keith. So yes, so I think that's the part we're talking about. The people who are unhappy with the establishment, I think, is what we're talking about here, not establishment Democrats. If I'm right, Danny, I hope. Am I making sense, Danny? Am I making sense, Keith?
Yes, I think so. There are a number of characteristics of the left that don't necessarily lead to a big state. So if you want to really help those who are vulnerable in society, maybe you could be one of the many, many people that work at food banks or homeless shelters or drug addiction recovery centers. These aren't some made up things that I think might exist in the voluntarist fake future of mine. They exist today where people help the most vulnerable among us. That's something the leftists could do voluntarily. If you say, I want everyone to have access to healthcare and I don't want that person to have a credit card or money or anything, well, what you could do is have the AOC fund where all the billions of leftists across the planet just use their PayPal or Indiegogo or GoFundMe or Kickstarter, and they're all going to chip in. Now, that's where the rubber meets the road and they have to bear the cost of their ideas. So I don't know what's going to happen. However, they absolutely have the right to make it happen. And Larry Sharpe does not have any right to stop them from doing so. They just got to let people opt out of it. So much of what they really want can be achieved voluntarily. The ideas of making sure the most vulnerable are helped, making sure that people are living with dignity, because a lot of inegalitarianism that can be voluntary can make people miserable. Think of any time you've been rejected by a job or by someone you had a crush on. This could really make someone depressed. We're not asking for the state to intervene there. Maybe that's where leftists can step in and help people stop being so depressed and live a more virtuous lifestyle. and not be so insecure about a lot of things. There's so many roles for the left to be so good. The problem is they've spent their life swimming with the tide, so they don't have a lot of intellectual muscle to, really back up their ideas. So they're always saying things need to change, therefore the state should have more power. And I'm against the wars, but it is what it is. I can vote against that stuff and still support the people doing it.
Gotcha. Wow. Okay, good. CT says Thomas Sowell, having formerly been a Marxist until becoming liberty-minded, shows how whether left or right, it's about the individual thinking for himself. And I think he would say the same thing, right? For those of you who don't know, he actually was kind of turned by Milton Friedman. However, he didn't turn right away, right? So even Thomas Sowell, right? Thomas Sowell believed in Marxism because with the information that he had, that made the most sense, right? With the information that he had, to him, that made the most sense. So he was a thinker. He wasn't just going to throw that away because some Milton Friedman guy says something. Whatever, it doesn't matter, right? So he took that into his head and began thinking. Then he worked for the Department of Labor. And he was like, libertarian. That was it. That was his final piece. But again, to your point, even he didn't just turn. He took the information he had, and with what he had, Marxism made the most sense. As he got more information, he began to change his mindset. Kind of in a way like you were talking about, Keith, with as you listen to other people, you began to make a change.
Yeah, and with him, it was specifically the minimum wage. He saw that people with the least amount of skills, the higher you raise the wage rate, the people that would get hurt are the poorest people. Whereas big business could still afford to pay those wages, and now they don't face as much competition as they previously did. So they had said, well, the reason that a lot of these people are poor, we still need to raise them. It's not because there's a minimum wage. It's because there was a terrible storm in Puerto Rico and a lot of the sugar fields were depleted. So Thomas Sowell said, I don't know how to verify if that's the problem. He goes, you know what? Let's look at the data when the minimum wage was a lot lower, and we'll see how populated the sugarcane fields were at that time. And he said that's when everyone turned on him. When he found a way to falsify whether or not the minimum wage was the primary cause of unemployment. And he said, of course, there was more sugar in the fields than there was today. So you would have thought that people would have had more money back then. Therefore, it's not the amount of sugar. It's actually pricing people out of the labor market has made the poor worse off.
Dave knew that. Dave actually posted. He said Thomas was a Marxist working in the Department of Labor, changed his mind. He still hasn't received an answer from the Department of Labor on whether or not the minimum wage helps sugar workers in Puerto Rico. So yeah, Dave was on board with that already. He was already with you. He typed that out before you wrote it. He was ready to go. So
and he likes Andrew Cuomo, apparently. Look at this. We're pulling people over all the time.
I'm not sure Dave likes Cuomo. But anyway, yes, I do appreciate that. Yes, I love that. That's good. Patty says, I guess now I will call myself bipolar politically. I am left on some things, right on others, and in the middle on most. But Patty, I think this is what Keith is saying, that the argument actually isn't left versus right. The argument is whether you're more left-leaning or right-leaning, do you want to use coercion or government force to make something happen? Or would you rather use your own persuasion, your own community, your own example to make someone or get someone to agree to be more left or right or middle? Am I right with that, Keith?
Yes, totally. And sometimes it's not enough to just have compassion. So if you really care about, I could be the most compassionate person in the world while someone's having a heart attack. If I don't know how to operate on someone who's having a heart attack, I can't help them. So you could want a lot of people in the world to be educated, but unless you're as good as Jeff Bezos as getting books to millions and millions of people in a very cheap manner, which helps a lot of small businesses who use things like Amazon, but you could also buy my book on Barnes & Noble or get a free PDF.
There we go.
If you don't have that information, you don't have that discipline, you don't have that willingness to admit you're wrong and learn new things and learn how to effectively make the poor better off, you could be as generous as you want as everyone starves to death around you.
There we go. Now, the reality is, guys, if you like what we're saying, if you think this is fun and exciting, your friends should see it, then like this so we can move through the algorithms, comment, and share. It matters. Share wherever you are, Twitter, put it wherever you want to put it someplace, wherever you want to do it. It's good if you share this to the best of your ability. we're about to wrap this up, Keith. Is there something that you want to talk about? Something I missed, or something that you think we should have chatted about? I tried to give a couple cool questions about the book and that kind of thing. They want to put you too much on the in the hot seat, but I hope it was interesting. What am I missing?
Of course, it was very interesting. Yeah, so the book has 50 chapters. Some are as short as 1 page. Let me just give you an introduction. The reason I think this is important is this is an article by Jason Brennan. I titled it 3 Thought Experiments. He has a PhD in philosophy. He works, his book was published by Princeton. So we have real legitimate names. It's not just like me, my cousin Louie yelling at the state all day. We really have people who the average person would say, well, that is an expert in the field. So let me show you how Brennan introduces people to the idea of voluntarism, only 1 page. Imagine virtuous Vanny cares deeply about others and is willing to do whatever it takes to save lives. She believes that processed sugar is a scourge killing Americans, so one day she packs a pistol, invades the local 7-Eleven and declares, "This here gun says you can't sell big gulps anymore." Principal Peter believes that you don't give enough money to charity. You're living high while others die. One day he sends you an email. FYI, I hacked into your bank account. I transferred 1/3 of it to poor single moms.
Wow.
Finally, decent Danny thinks you should buy an American rather than German car. After all, your fellow citizens provide you with roads, schools, and police. You owe them some business. He finds you shopping at a foreign dealer, pulls a taser out on you and says, "You know what? I'll let you buy that BMW, but only if you first pay me $3,000.
Wow.
You probably regard Vanny, Peter, and Danny as criminals. How dare they treat you like that? You'd want the police to arrest them, but there's a puzzle here. While the police would indeed arrest Vanny, Peter, and Danny, they're also happy to help other people, bureaucrats in Washington, Berlin, or Ottawa, do the same things Vanny, Peter, and Danny want to do. So this set of examples suggests a few questions. What, if anything, explains why it's wrong for Peter to take 1/3 of your income, but not wrong for the government tax office to do so? What, if anything, justifies the Food and Drug Administration in determining what you can and can't eat and forbids you from doing so? In general, governments claim the right to do things ordinary people may not do. What, if anything, justifies that? This is one of the central questions in political philosophy. So that is an example of something where he doesn't talk about John McCain. He says, let's talk about these 3 things. Let me get your opinion on them. Now, let me take the opinion you just gave me and tell me what you think about applying it to this group called the Catholic Church or the Red Cross or the Dr. Phil Show or Congress. There's no difference. They're just a group of people. By the way, speaking of the name Danny, I hope we answered Danny's question about.
Yeah, but Danny was the smart one. Danny got the $3,000 for the car. Everyone else gave it away. Danny was the smart one.
Stupid.
Right?
He had the lowest time preference. I was referring to the Danny in the chat who asked.
I know.
About,
I was totally teasing you.
Who asked about doesn't the left love big government? I hope we answered her question. Yes. If not, I apologize.
Yeah, no worries.
I'll try again.
Daniel says, great show, great guest. I like that. You've got some friends. Jerry says, love you, Larry. God bless. I don't know anything else to say. Oh, that is so sweet. I do appreciate that. Well, guys, I want to say, please follow Keith on Libertarian Inst on Twitter. Head over to his website. Check out his book. It is called
The Voluntarist Handbook.
There we go. It's right there. It's a nice collection of essays and such. A lot of good stuff. Hope you enjoyed this. Please like, comment, share. And of course, always, please support my sponsor. And I will see you all very soon.